Hello everybody, it is The Deep Dive, your weekly edition of brilliant insight into what is going on in the world of Liverpool Football Club. And it's been a hectic one. Apologies for the timekeeping. I've seen loads of you in the chat having a pop at us for being late. I can only apologise, but we've been through about 3 or 4 different iterations of what this show could be this week. It was started off on Monday as a Ruben AMORIM special. There was meant to be somebody else with us. That got knocked on the head. It turned into a Gary O'Neill special very quickly. And now here we are. We're going to have a look at all the candidates who are linked with the job of replacing Jurgen Klopp. We're going to have a big old deep dive into Arne Slot, of course, given the breaking news in the past half an hour. We've had to pivot and bend and flex a lot over the last 24 hours. Josh, first and foremost, how are you doing?
I've been better. I'm swimming against the tide today, mate. Christ. Yeah. As you say, the top of the show has changed a few times, so we're going to have some form of deep dive into Arne Slot, but I think the deep dive will probably be further down the line, to be honest.
Yes, there's going to be an all you need to know in the pipeline without a shadow of a doubt. But we'll be fine. We'll be absolutely fine. And this all comes back to, actually, before we dive into the managers, I wanted to ask you, because there's a pause, I suppose the warning signs were there over the weekend, actually. There's a couple of murmurings came out that Edwards and Hughes weren't afraid to sort of make a brave choice, and maybe the unpopular choice in a lot of ways. And you're a data guy, and this is what we talk about when it comes to sort of taking emotion out of decisions, and obviously this forensic approach to finding the best man for the job. I guess this is where it can lead you sometimes, because we all get lost in the world of Xabi Alonso and then Ruben AMORIM, but then the people behind the scenes are looking at this in a completely different way, and this is where you can end up, I guess.
Yeah, it is difficult. Like, I mean, when it comes to a manager, mate, there's so much in it that comes into play. Some of it matters, some of it doesn't. Sometimes people are talking about haircuts. Sometimes people are talking about which party that the person's voting for in terms of government and all this stuff. Yeah. It is nuts how much comes into it, and even from a data perspective, it's difficult to look at a team and analyse the team and be like, right, the team are doing really well, so the coach is boss. Sometimes there's context like behind it, and a lot of the time, like Jurgen Klopp, amazing. Last season.
No, exactly. There's been a couple of them, haven't they?
Liverpool were awful, mate. So, it is mad trying to assess managers and putting weight on them and that, and determining who's good and who's bad. So, but I attempted to do that actually, a couple of months ago with my Substack. Yeah. And very, very annoyingly, I did Europe's big 6 leagues, and Arne Slot is not in the big 6 league. So that's
really annoying. That would have been really handy now, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would have been nice for if he'd have shown up. I could have said, "Look, my Substack there was on the ball," but he weren't part of the sample. So annoying. But we move. We
get through it. Quick super chat before we get going. Knock. Sometimes what you want isn't what you need. Sorry, I just lost it there. Is what you need, and what you need isn't what you want. Okay, sound. Philosophical,
I like it.
That's a nice way
very
to
deep dive, that.
You're very deep dive, yeah, absolutely. And I guess what you're referring to there, Ian Graham, was it you said, the management analysis is the Holy Grail?
The Holy Grail, he said,
There we go.
Kind of like untouched, the unknown frontier.
Okay, well, we're going to have a good go of it anyway. Arne Slot, very much the favourite now to become Liverpool's new manager as of next season. All the big journals have tweeted it this afternoon. So let's dive into it then. I had a quick look. Well, I'll get your take on it in a bit more detail. He's got a 61.11% win percentage as a manager in his career so far. Jurgen Klopp, for reference, has 57.77, so there's a tick in that particular box. Formerly of AZ Alkmaar, under contract to Feyenoord until 2026, 45 years old, and plays with a predominantly 4-3-3 formation. What can you expand on now? Yeah,
well, he also plays 4-2-3-1 as well, and I think this is complete guesswork, but I think if AMORIM, it has been ruled out of the race for footballing reasons, I think it'll be because of his system. Right. We did flag that, didn't we, recently? We did a show on that, and I think if you look at Liverpool's squad, where we are probably the weakest for depth would be centre-half, and AMORIM would need 3 of them, at least, starting. And where we are deepest in terms of depth is probably centre-mid, and AMORIM wanted 2 of them, for the midfield too. So if they've spoke to him and he's been really rigid with this is my shape, and I think he will have been, I think that could have been a problem, because Liverpool have just had a bit of an overhaul last summer. I don't think Liverpool will want to do it again. And if he's going to come in and use a specific system, he's going to require business to get done. I don't think Liverpool will specifically want to do that this summer. So to bring in someone like Slot, who is a bit more of a natural fit maybe for the current system. I think makes a bit of sense. Obviously he speaks English, which is good. And you mentioned before we started recording that I do think it's important, I've said this on my Substack quite a bit, I think it's important for Liverpool to appoint someone who has kind of proved an ability to be a disruptor, basically. Yeah. You know, we've touched on that before with Benitez, Klopp, you know, at Dortmund. Yeah. AMORIM with Sporting.
Well, all three candidates now, all three candidates who've been heavily linked with the job have upset the natural order in their respective countries. We've got Arne Slot now, who's done it in Holland last year, winning the Eredivisie. As you mentioned, AMORIM in the Premier League, and of course, Xabi Alonso's just done it in Germany in the Bundesliga. So you're right, and that feels like, as part of the criteria Liverpool are looking at, that feels like one of them boxes. Yeah,
I think it makes a lot of sense. And Slot's obviously done it with Feyenoord. I think Feyenoord are kind of the Sporting of the Netherlands, maybe a little bit. I think they've obviously benefited from Ajax falling off a cliff this season. But apparently, I think even when Slot was in charge of AZ, I think in the COVID season, apparently he was really unlucky. I think they were neck and neck with Ajax at the top of the season, at the midway point of the season. And I think the season got cancelled because of COVID. Mm-hmm. But if that didn't happen, apparently he was in with a shout with winning the league at that point, and that was with AZ. So
that'd have been remarkable.
Yeah,
that would have been remarkable.
Obviously, that's why Feyenoord poached him, and he ends up winning it with Feyenoord. Yeah. So he has got a degree of that, you know, punching above his weight type thing, and naturally in charge of Liverpool, coming up against the likes of Man City and that giants with more money than you. Yeah. You know, you need an element of that.
I must admit, when I was doing a little bit of research on him this morning, before I knew he was seemingly the main contender, the leading front runner for the job, I was quite pleased with the fact that when I checked some of his stats and I seen the fact he predominantly does use, and he's got variations of this as well, which is great, but he predominantly does use a 4-3-3. That was a bit of a tick for me, because obviously we did spend a lot of time last week or the week before talking about Ruben Amorim and the fact that he was quite non-negotiable on this 3-4-3, and that, as you say, that might have been one of the reasons why Liverpool have made a U-turn away from him potentially. And I think having somebody else who's going to come in and use a very similar formation, given how we've been sort of shaped in the mould of Jurgen Klopp for 9 years now, and the squad's been very much bought with that in mind, that, you mentioned it there loosely, that does feel like a real positive in Slot.
Yeah. I think it allows him to just come in and have a bit more of an immediate go at it, as opposed to someone like AMORIM coming in and needing a lot of surgery before he can get to his end goal. And I saw a recent line, actually. He's getting linked with West Ham, AMORIM. Yes, yeah. And I saw something along the lines of they would allow AMORIM to design the squad. I think, again, that's specifically in relation to his back three, his midfield four and his front three, and, you know, constructing it in that kind of way, whereas I don't think Liverpool really want to do that. And if they did, I don't think they'd specifically if they're installing a bit of a data-driven approach, I don't specifically think an approach that incorporates three centre-halves, you know. I know it's a bit cliche to call a back three defensive. I don't think it technically is, but one of kind of Ian Graham's takes, if you want, is if you can, it just makes sense. It sounds really stupid, sounds really basic, but if you can, it makes more sense to get as many attackers who actually have threat on the pitch as possible. If you're employing a back three, you know, that makes it a little bit harder. So I think getting someone like Slot in, who is already favouring 4-3-3 and 4-2-3-1. You know, it will just allow Liverpool to like start the next season. Just basically get the ball rolling immediately rather than making all kinds of squad adjustments and things like that.
A little bit of continuity there, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, what have you found out about him then? What do we know? Yeah,
well, I mean, I obviously haven't had as much time as usual to have a look at the numbers, so I've got no visits yet this week, but in terms of his numbers, really good in attack, really good in defence, probably edge PSV on the defensive side this season, but PSV are better on the attacking side, and PSV are winning the league. But overall, it's pretty good. I think they're the second highest presses in the league for PPDA, behind again PSV. PSV are managed by Peter Bowes, I think, but he managed Dortmund a couple of years ago, I think, and it didn't really go particularly well, so that's probably why he's not on the fray, and Slot is. But yeah, he seems to adopt this kind of proactive game, but I think one of the issues with this is it is the Eredivisie.
Yeah, of course.
And Erik ten Hag looked amazing in that league, mate, and he's not. He's really not. He's not.
That's what he's trying to tell me.
Yeah, I mean, I actually thought ten Hag did okay in his first season, but this season, mate, I think he's awful, absolutely awful. So that's one of the issues. Like the underlying numbers attached to his team are really, really good. But it is Holland. Like just as an example, right? Probably the main indicator of the level of a team in terms of how they're coached is just expected goal difference per match, right? So the higher the number, the more you're taking care of the result with your performance, if you know what I mean. By just like posting more shots than the opposition and not facing many on the opposite end and things like that. So Feyenoord's number is about 1.9, right? That's really, really high. That's really good. So if we look at Europe's big 5 leagues, the best is Bayern on 1.7, followed by Inter on 1.3.
Just won the league as well, Inter, haven't they?
Yeah. Leverkusen on 1.3, Arsenal on 1.3, City on 1.1, and then Liverpool on 1.1 as well. All really good teams. So obviously the number kind of correlates with success to an extent. Yeah. As I said, the best in that out of them teams I've just named there is 1.7. Feyenoord are up at 1.9, but it's the Eredivisie.
That's always the caveat with all of this, isn't it?
Yeah.
A lot of people in the chat are saying a very similar thing. It's the Dutch league, you know. But and I get it, and ultimately they're right as well. You can't really argue against it. It's not one of the elite leagues in Europe, is it? So it's difficult sort of to take what we've seen as sort of a litmus test and really stack it up against what's going on in the Premier League and stuff like that. You mentioned the 4-2-3-1 a couple of times, and that is a formation he does often turn to. From a Liverpool standpoint, how do you think that looks? We spent a lot of time, we won't spend anywhere near as much time talking about it as this time did with AMORIM last week, as we did with the 3-4-3, but how do you think that could look from a Liverpool perspective?
Well, obviously it'd allow the incorporation of an additional midfielder, potentially. It'd keep the back 4, which is good, benefits Van Dijk. I think one of the issues I had with the back 3 thing again was the fact that Van Dijk has come out publicly and said on international duty he doesn't like back 3s, he doesn't know why Van Gaal is using it. He's clashed with Van Gaal, and Van Gaal's done the whole like I'm the manager type thing. So the back 4 we kind of know what to expect with that anyway. Midfield 2, there's different ways to do it. It depends if your 10 is going to actually be like a 10/8 or if he's just going to be a forward. Do you get what I mean? So it could be Gakpo, as in that sense he'd be a forward, or it could be a Szoboszlai, and then you'd maybe do a 2 of Trent and McAllister potentially, if you're going fully for it, like.
Really? Would you not just for Endo and McAllister?
Possibly. I don't know. That's definitely the big thing that I'm looking for with the next manager. What he does with Trent. I think out of all the players, how do you interpret what Trent is as a player? Positionally, like, because what he's doing at the minute, Klopp's basically saying to him, this entire half of the pitch, do what you want. That's basically what he's saying.
Absolutely, yeah.
But are you uncomfortable with that?
No, not necessarily. No, the Trent midfield thing is a fascinating conversation to me, and it always has been, always will be in so many senses, because we're not a million miles removed from just waxing lyrical about him being the best right back in the world and, stacking him up against anybody ever played the game, let alone now, in that position. Yeah. So it feels, and I know he's got the skill set and the attributes to play in midfield. That's clear for anyone to see. We need to watch the kid for 20 minutes kick a ball around, and you can see he's a midfielder in waiting. But transferring that to midfield, where it can be more congested and there are DMs up your arse half the time trying to win the ball off you, feels really difficult. When he has the freedom that he has often at right back, with the whole pitch to look at, you can see the whole picture in front of him, that feels like complete and utter bliss, utopia for Trent Alexander-Arnold, you know what I mean? So I'm always a little bit uncomfortable with him moving into midfield. Not necessarily when he wanders into there as extra man, because more often than not, nobody's actually picking him up, because why would they? Because he's not a midfielder in trade. But when you move him physically into midfield, that whole conversation to me feels really difficult.
Yeah. I think specifically it stems from kind of the way in which he uses us too a lot of the time. Like, I think, don't get me wrong, I think Endo, to be fair, has surprised a lot of us with his stuff on the ball. Yeah. He releases it quickly and things like that. But Slot kind of uses his 4 at the, so it's 2 centre halves and there's 2 midfielders, a little bit like De Zerbi uses his, in the sense that he kind of, say you got the opposition pressing in 4-3-3 or whatever, he uses it as like, quick bounce passes, like one-touch passes to get around you, and then you accelerate the game up the pitch. Okay. But these guys are responsible for kind of like, it's one touch, if it's fed into him by Van Dijk, he will already know the next pass with his first touch is going here and then ideally here, you know, further up the field.
Yeah.
So technical stuff, basically.
Yeah. No, absolutely, yeah.
But obviously Endo, as I said, has been good on the ball and things like that. But I wouldn't be surprised if. I mean, you've got Gravenberch too, by the way. You've got Jones, but obviously, I think he'll probably stick with 4-3-3 personally, because 4-2-3-1. It's just interesting now. I mean, we've got a lot of number 8s.
Yes.
You know, and this is not a number 8 system, so I think he could do it at times. But Gravenberch, for me, likes to do the box-to-box stuff. That's one of the reasons he left Bayern Munich, because they use 4-2-3-1. So. But the fact he's flexible in that sense can only be a good thing.
Yeah, it certainly can. And is it too simplistic to say this is away from tactics and systems and principles really now? The Dutch connection? No, we've got a lot of Dutch lads in this side. Like, it does feel as though, you know, they could be sort of chomping at the bit and excited by the prospect of having one of their compatriots lead the team. Yeah,
it's definitely possible. It can only benefit them, really. Yeah. I mean, he'll know Gakpo having come up against him. I'm sure he'll know Gravenberch having come up against him as well. Yeah. Van Dijk is the Dutch captain, so everyone knows about Van Dijk anyway. Yeah. So yeah, that can only benefit them. And I will say as well, Feyenoord are kind of like they are very Liverpool, you know, like when it comes to the city. Yes. You know, it's quite a working class city and stuff like that. You know, Rotterdam. So maybe that you could argue there's some kind of connection there when it comes to the people and all that stuff. Apparently, he's a really nice fella. You know, great lad and all that stuff. Whatever.
Get him in then, yeah.
It's done. I hate that cliche line. You know, he's a great lad. He's a great lad, but.
As I said a moment ago, I do a little bit of research. Obviously, they won the Dutch Cup this weekend as well, which is another tick in his box. They won the Eredivisie last season. They are off the pace to PSV, as you mentioned a moment ago, this season. Marcel van der Kraan, a well-respected Dutch football expert, described him having the Pep Guardiola style of football. What do you make of that? You on board?
What does he mean, though? What does he mean, do you know what I mean?
Death by 1,000 passes would be my...
Yeah, well, I did try and have a little gander at that before we came on, but it doesn't look like he... Like, I would say Alonso's a bit that. You know, but Alonso's super, like, uber short passes and, you know, it's very methodical, it's very controlled. Feyenoord are not as crazy with that. They're not Ajax. No. Ajax are that team still.
Yeah, total football.
Yeah,
absolutely,
Ajax is still playing like that, slow and intricate stuff. But I'll have to look into it more with Feyenoord, you know, when it comes to the style. But I wouldn't, off the top of my head now, I wouldn't agree personally, but you know, he knows more than I do.
Yeah, no, we are playing off the cuff here a little bit. What I will say is as well, I did find a quote from him, and he said, if that is my next step, staying in Holland, that was a question, then he's failed completely. The normal step will be to go abroad, and I've always said the best league in the world is the Premier League. So that, to me, shows ambition, and shows he's clearly wants to go further in his coaching career, which can only be viewed as a positive as well. Yeah,
well, do you know what I find interesting? I'd like to know more on this. What happened with Spurs?
Because he was linked to Spurs heavily, wasn't he? Yeah.
Well, as far as I know, he virtually had the job, and last minute, it just kind of fell through. And I think it fell through from Slot's end, where he was like, "Nah, you know what? Swerve it."
Interesting.
And I don't know what the reason behind that was. I don't know if he bottled it last second or if he just thought he'd be better staying or what, but
interesting. Okay. While I found out that, I found the Boss article to do so, can you sort of sum up in a way? I was going to ask you on every single manager we're going to talk about. We are going to run through a few more in a moment.
Yeah.
But in terms of like out of 10, if you can, mark-wise, how excited, how suitable an appointment is this for Liverpool? Because again, I reiterate, at time of recording right now, we're 15, 20 minutes off the back of every reputable journalist in and around Liverpool naming this guy as the chief candidate to succeed Jurgen Klopp.
Yeah, I think above anything else, I'm probably intrigued at the moment. I think he's a good fit for the squad, above all else, which is, again, a crucial thing, and I think maybe that might have knocked AMORIM out of the running. He seems to have that, you know, good attacking numbers, good defensive numbers. Seems to be, you know, capable of managing a top side in Holland and delivering the league title, crucially delivering trophies and things like that. And nearly did the same with AZ, disrupting in that sense. You know, when it comes to taking charge of the team that isn't the favourite necessarily when it comes to winning the league and getting over the line with that. So it's difficult to give it out of 10. Yeah, it's hard, mate. What about you? How are you feeling with it then? Like, are you like...
Listen, I'd be lying if I said I was in love with the idea. I would.
Yeah.
I was in love with the idea of Xabi Alonso. I'd reasonably come round to the prospect of Ruben Amorim. I felt like that would... And that's the problem with all this, isn't it? You know, when you are so set on somebody and that gets scuppered or that doesn't happen, and then you fall to the next one, you find yourself falling in love with that idea, and then so on and so on. We are moving further down that pecking order here. I'd have to do a lot more research on it myself, much like you will. I want to speak to some people in and around it. But on the face of it, I can get on board with it right now. What I will say is I've seen a lot of people saying like, oh, this is clearly just like a stopgap, an interim appointment. This is not gonna last. I mean, I'd reserve judgment because it's difficult to say that. A lot of people instantly saying and dismissing him because it's the Eredivisie. Listen, a lot of good stuff's come out of Dutch football before now. You know what I mean? It's not out the realms of possibility that he will be a huge success at Liverpool. Do everything we see suggest that he will be? Not necessarily yet.
Yeah.
But it's difficult, isn't it?
I can see why, though, people would be like maybe a bit underwhelmed by it.
Underwhelmed is the word.
Yeah.
Underwhelmed is absolutely the word. But then we're replacing the irreplaceable in Jurgen Klopp. So I think anybody was going to be a step down from him. We know that. The ideal solution to all of this, and I've said this since the moment he announced he was leaving, the ideal Klopp successor is Klopp deciding, no, I'm going to stay. You know what I mean? That's it. Other than that, everything is a disappointment.
Yeah.
Alonso was less so, Amorim was less so, Arne Slot is less so again. That's kind of how this is going. What I will say is, we can't keep doing this. You know what I mean? If all of a sudden, if Slot isn't the guy, then we really are. You know, scraping the barrel's too strong a term.
Fully enough, on my way here, I did say to the lad who was in the car with, you know, I would absolutely want to avoid the point where Spurs go on a point Nuno Espirito Santo because there's nobody left, mate. You know, that's scary. You know, so obviously we don't want to get to that point, but it did look at a point that we were doing this at the ideal time because Alonso was just coming onto the scene. It was ideal and all that, but suddenly, you know, obviously buying it in the market. Barcelona, Barcelona as well. So it's competitive out there, and a number of choices, and you have to make a choice. You have to get someone. There's nobody. It feels like everyone's maybe like 2 or 3 years away from being the next big thing. Like even like a Motta, you know, someone like a Thiago Motta who was at Bologna. It just feels like nobody's fully grabbing it at the minute, you know what I mean? Everyone's just all right. Everyone's there's no standouts anywhere. So I'm open-minded with it, and tune in next week to find out like what I properly think, because then I'll have done my own work. Yeah,
absolutely. You completely U-turned on it yourself by then. I just had a look at that. He basically just signed a new contract to Feyenoord and said my job wasn't done yet, and there's no rationale as to why he decided to stay.
Yeah, see, that's curious, isn't it though?
Yeah, it is, because it was signed, still delivered, apart from him not actually arriving at Tottenham, basically. Very odd. We are going to run the rule over the other candidates just quickly as well. Thomas Tuchel, will begin with him. Leaving Bayern Munich at the end of the season, as we know. 57.31% win record in his managerial career up till now. Successful at Chelsea, you know, could still be successful at Bayern Munich if they go on to win the Champions League. Obviously, lifted the Bundesliga last year. For me, sort of away from the tactical and the system side of things again, good manager. I quite like him personality-wise. I think he'd be a decent fit. What I will say is it feels like everywhere he leaves with a sour taste in his mouth all the time.
Yeah, definitely. I think, again, I was saying before to me mates, I think arguably, out of everyone, he's probably the best manager out there. He's probably got the best CV, the best at what he does and results, performances, coach and everything. But he falls out with everyone. Yes. He just falls out with everyone, mate. So if he is one of them and Edwards is making this decision with Hughes, I just don't think he'll go down that route. As good as Tuchel is as a coach, and by the way, he's successfully replaced Klopp twice. Now, you've got to be some fella to do that, you know. And I think
he's not scared of that challenge, is he?
No. And I think if you listen to him as well, I think he's really interesting. I think he'd be great for us, you know, media soundbites and all that stuff. And he's dead interesting, tactical. He's big fan of the data and all that stuff, Tuchel. So I think he's dead interesting. I've always really, really liked him. But the idea of him managing my club, you feel like any success would be short-lived, and suddenly it'd be dark clouds and that, and you know, you just don't want that, do you, ever?
No, and on that note, I'm going to fast forward a few managers here because it feels like the perfect segue into Jose Mourinho, who for some reason...
Oh, you're going there, are we?
Well, I'm going to go there very briefly because for some reason he's been the talk of the town, and by the town, I mean the Twitter timeline, in the past 48 hours, primarily because he was at Craven Cottage.
Yeah.
I mean...
And nothing else.
I'm not alone in thinking that you said there, he leaves dark clouds, and I think he does, by the way. But Jose Mourinho would undo everything positive that Jurgen Klopp has left in place here if he was to ever arrive at Liverpool. And I've seen people, and some serious people, saying, why not for 12 months? Tell us why not for 12 months, please.
Do I even have to go there?
Please, just a couple of sentences.
Which lens am I looking down here? Let me just look down and just say no. Absolutely not. It's just never going to happen. Like, I think people label him as a winner. I was listening this week to Talk Sport. People were talking about him as a winner. Mate, he hasn't won a Champions League knockout game in 11 years, I think.
11 years?
I think I'm right in saying that. He was a winner. 100% he was a winner. He's not no more. He is a dinosaur nowadays, mate. Okay. And he doesn't. Again, any success is short-lived, and unlike Tuchel, he would not anymore guarantee that short-term success. Yeah. Tuchel probably would, but yeah, that's probably enough, isn't it?
Yeah, it's categorically dismissed. That'll do for me.
It's never going to happen. But it would be hilarious, though. It would be box office. And I do think he'd give his arm to manage Liverpool, by the way. I think he'd absolutely love that.
Because a lot of people resurfacing that clip of when he was loving the You Never Walk Alone. I think he's Champions League final years ago, wasn't it? Yeah, but he would absolutely jump at the opportunity 100%.
Yeah, as a person, I do think he's absolutely great for the game. Like,
well, you mentioned the media side of things. We'd be box office with Jose Mourinho.
He is funny. I mean, my phone's packed full of Mourinho memes.
Well, yeah, we talk about that upstairs, full enough, actually. You and your Mourinho memes, enough.
Always,
yeah. So that'd have been handy.
Yeah, I'd get a boost in that department, but I don't think the pitch stuff would be very good.
On football-wise, maybe not. A couple more interesting ones than Jose Mourinho, and potentially more serious candidates as well, if it isn't to be Slot, of course. Gary O'Neill was mentioned quite heavily earlier on today, actually. I mean, he does tick a couple of boxes. He's young enough. He's doing a very good job at the moment at Wolves. I think he's quite an exciting prospect. I don't think he's a big enough name to take the job at Liverpool. And that's no disrespect to Gary O'Neill as well. But I guess in terms of like FSG type appointments, he might have been in contention potentially. Yeah,
I actually think Gary O'Neill is doing really well at what he's at his current club, and I think he's had 2 jobs now in the Premier League. Both of them have been really bad jobs in the sense that he comes in at Bournemouth. They're pretty much going down, and he saves them. And then after saving them, they say, you know what, we're going to go somewhere else. Yeah. We're not keeping you on. And he takes over Wolves really close to the start of the season, I think, with...
On the eve of the season,
with Lopetegui basically saying, I'm actually getting off because you're not buying no one and you're selling players or whatever. Yeah. So 2 really bad situations, and he's took control of both of them. Yeah. And I watched him on Monday Night Football earlier this season with Carragher, and I thought he was brilliant. He was genuinely brilliant. Like. He's a really good communicator. You can tell he knows his stuff and he can get the message across and that. And so lots of tick boxes there, to be fair. And I think he'd work really well naturally with Edwards and Hughes. And I know for certain that he's really close to Edwards. Yeah. That was why I was never like ruling it out or anything like that. But the data on him though is a bit, probably for them reasons, the 2 jobs that he's had, the data's a bit beige. Yeah. There's not much there. And in terms of being a pull for the best players, you're not getting that. Well, not just a pull in terms of bringing players in, but keeping the current players there. We've spoken a lot recent weeks about Trent's contract situation, obviously Virgil van Dijk, Mohamed Salah, and others in the Monk's squad as well. You need to convince them that you're the right man to take Liverpool forwards. And again, all due respect to Gary O'Neill, he's been at the club before, did a little spell coaching there, but I don't see him as being that guy. Just off tangents here, but with Slot, you know, is there an element of that? You said before the word is underwhelming. Yes. If you're Virgil, Salah, contract situations, Trent especially, and you're seeing this news, what is going through your head? I think for Virgil, it's an easier circle to square because he probably knows more about his work and he's seen him lift the Eredivisie, and Virgil probably holds the Eredivisie in higher stead than me and you and after chat because of the fact he's watched it growing up. You know what I mean? He probably sees that not as the pinnacle of football, clearly, because he's more intelligent than that, but he probably sees that as a really good achievement. Certainly with a club like Feyenoord, we already mentioned about them upsetting the natural order of things. So he probably sees that as being, fair play, you know, a really boss achievement. So maybe it's quite simple with him. I think likewise with Trent. I think Trent might be a little bit underwhelmed with the appointment as well, potentially, but
Liverpool lad, just been made vice captain, probably an easier conversation to have in and around that. Mohamed Salah is the concern here when he looks at the appointment and he's completely underwhelmed by it. Plus the fact he's coming to the final year of his contract, there's already enough talk around him and Saudi Arabia and stuff like that. That'd be my biggest area of like, okay, I'm not sure that appointment is enough to convince Salah to stick around.
Yeah, but again, it goes back to it, like, as Liverpool, a heavyweight club, you can't just necessarily appoint someone who looks like a boss coach. If you're intent on buying the best players, you have to have someone in charge who's accustomed with dealing with those massive personalities and will keep them in the door and will bring them in as well. And I think Klopp's been a huge positive with that, landing the likes of Virgil and that ahead of Man City. So that pull, it is important. Like.
Oh, massively so, yeah. A couple more names I wanted to quickly touch upon before we start to wrap up. You mentioned it a moment ago, obviously Iraola took over from Gary O'Neill at Bournemouth. A really left field appointment in a lot of ways. Not anybody, loads of people would have been particularly au fait with his work at Rayo Vallecano, of course, but looks to be one of the up-and-coming coaches, really. And I guess a negative on his name would be similar to Gary O'Neill in terms of, I think honours-wise, I don't think he's lifted a single. He lifted a Cypriot Cup, actually. I checked this morning. Cypriot Cup, yeah. But again, does that really raise eyebrows in the Liverpool change room and go, well, what? You know what I mean? He hasn't got that wow factor, has it, at all, Iraola. Really smart coach, 4-2-3-1 again, young enough. But the big red flag would appear to me to be the lack of top level honours. Yeah,
that's it. That kind of aura almost, that like ego where you can, in a good way though, where you can walk in the changing room with your chest out and say like, I'm your new manager, how are you feeling? type thing. I think Iraola, I do really rate him actually. I think when he got him in, even though I rated Gary O'Neill at the time, I thought it was a good move getting Iraola in. Took a few weeks/months for them to get to the grips with his ways, but then we started to see the rewards of it really, and he's definitely proactive. He's into his pressing game and all that stuff. Certainly getting the most out of a few of their performers, like Solanke especially, players like that. So I do think he's really good, but I do think he also has a bit of a ceiling as a coach personally. If you just think of, I don't know, some coaches, you just, as good as they are, you just can't see
them breaking that.
No, you can't see them in charge of a team that is expected to win every week. And if they are, they just look a bit, it just doesn't look right. I don't know what it is, it's weird. Hodgson, you could put in that bracket as well, but I think he's far better than Roy Hodgson when it comes to this kind of job, don't get me wrong, but I think some managers are suited to this kind of thing, and some managers are suited to being a bit more of an underdog, almost. And he seems to be one of them, but could be wrong.
No, I agree. I'd put Graham Potter in that category, to be honest with you. And when he moved to Chelsea, he said a very similar thing. He didn't feel like a good fit to me.
Yeah.
Last couple before we do wrap up. Thomas Frank. I thought he was a real contender for this, personally. And again, he definitely falls into the category of 0 top honours, so I'm aware of that. But in terms of sort of adaptability, in terms of buying into a data-driven approach, Brentford were all about that, you know what I mean? Yeah. He felt like another very Michael Edwards FSG pick. Yeah,
I think he's been kind of growing a little bit in the background, I think, steadily just climbing the pecking order a little bit. And I think you're right, he's got a lot of positives attached to him. He speaks the language, he's accustomed to Premier League football now. He has shown that adaptability. I think in the Premier League it has been predominantly direct, but how much of that do you put on the fact that he's got Ivan Toney up front and he's just using them? And in the Championship it was a lot more, kind of possession-based and possession-based and stuff, and they scored a fair few goals. They had good attacking numbers, good defensive numbers. As you say, he's accustomed to working as part of a data-driven approach. Yeah. It's never really gloomy, is it, at Brentford? It's always kind of like he's quite positive and stuff like that. And I also think, similar to Klopp, he's got an element of character to him, and he's quite an eccentric, isn't he? And I think we'd grow to love him, to be honest.
I would as well, yeah. I wrote the words. And this was initially one of the reasons I didn't want Thomas Frank. But now we've got further down the line, as I mentioned earlier, it's not Alonso, it's unlikely to be AMORIM. I wrote the words Klopp light, because I get that vibe with Thomas Frank. And originally I was like, oh no, I don't want someone who's almost imitating Jurgen Klopp, even though he's not, that's just the way he is. Yeah. But now I'm thinking, okay, I actually might not mind that. It means I could grow to love him, I can get on board with him. It feels like somebody we could all get behind, you know what I mean? Which is a big factor in all of this, you know what I mean? And Slot or whoever it is going to have to be that guy as well. There is one more name I wanted to run by you. Pep Linders.
Pep Linders.
Are you amazed? Are you amazed that he seemingly isn't in the running? And I know he isn't because he's basically said, I'm not in the running.
Exactly, yeah.
But has the prospect or the idea of Pep Linders taking over in terms of continuity, has that grown on you at all over the days and weeks that have gone since Klopp announced it?
Well, I think there just must be a reason as to why that's not the case, and I think he's probably made it clear himself that, like, in addition to Klopp ending the project, he feels part of the project or whatever. And I do think, to be fair though, that as good as he is, and I did think I've had plenty of points over the past couple of years where I've thought he's the guy. He's like the, Paisley almost coming through after Shankly. But I do think Liverpool will benefit from a kind of clean slate, fresh start, new voice type thing. So, yeah, and initially I was surprised when Klopp announced that he was leaving and Pep was like, I'm going with him. But I have come to terms with it over the past couple of weeks/months, and it is probably the right thing. But I mean, he could end up back one day. You never know, do you? He's only starting his managerial career, so if he does really well, we could see him back.
Well, I suppose we all love Pep, and for obvious reasons, he's been brilliant for Liverpool. But his only sort of dive into management up until this point wasn't a very successful one. I think it's fair to say. So he probably does need to go and sort of earn his stripes elsewhere before he returns to Liverpool. So difficult one. I mean, are we any wiser after all of this? Are you still? I'm gonna Roberto De Zerbi. Are you still?
I knew that was coming. And
it had to come at some point. Let's be honest here. Forget about all the names we've just discussed, and forget about the fact we know Slot clearly is seemingly the one now. It's not Alonso. It's not Pep Linders. It's not AMORIM. Clean slate. Just knowing that bit of information, who would be your pick?
I think when this process started for me, the three standouts were probably Alonso, AMORIM and Nagelsmann. They were probably removing all the personality traits and the fact he wears mad suits and like skateboards. If you just look at his CV and his managerial history, what he's done with teams and that, I think they were the three best coaches that we could have got. Yep. Alonso stays, Nagelsmann extends his contract, and AMORIM is wedded to a system that does not benefit Liverpool's squad. So you move all three of them out. Who's left? And if you look at who's left, I have been I have exaggerated a little bit with my love for De Zerbi. I don't think he's like the next Guardiola or something like that. I've been playing on it a little bit, but I do rate him really highly. Like last season, I keep saying it, last season Brighton took more shots than any other team in the Premier League. That's insane. That just doesn't happen ever. 38 games. Man City have got Haaland up front, Kevin De Bruyne, Bernardo Silva and everything. De Zerbi's managing Solly Marsh, and he finishes top of the league for shots, mate. Yeah. And he would do good shots as well. And he was teaching Klopp a lesson when we were playing, and he was dancing around us and everything. This season, he's lost Caicedo, McAllister, Marsh, Matoma, Estepinian, all for different periods, in some cases for the whole season. Colwell's gone back to Chelsea, and they're still kind of like all right. They're not amazing or anything like that, but they're like 10th.
They're going to beat Man City on Thursday as well. So
yeah, and if you look at the players he's picking, they're just all right players. Like, I don't know what people expect when it comes to Brighton. So that's no disrespect, by the way. And one thing I like about De Zerbi in comparison to a Frank is you know what you're appointing stylistically. Yeah. Style-wise, you know exactly what you're getting. And what I think Man United have been baffled by is they've got in Ten Hag expecting this Ajax way, and he's come in and completely played an entirely different way. What on earth? The fella they've appointed, the playing style they've appointed is not there. It's completely different. So at least with De Zerbi, you know exactly what you're getting. But yeah, I'm going off on a tangent anyway. But
no, it's fine. I knew I was going to get you going on De Zerbi.
Yeah, once I look into Slot properly, ask me after that, and I'll give you my thing. But yeah, Thiago Motta's another interesting one, by the way.
Thiago Motta, Inzaghi,
definitely. Yeah.
The guy Girona, is it Mikel?
Yeah.
Really interesting profiles, all of them. Yeah. But the only reason I've listed the names that I've listed today is because they're the ones seemingly most likely.
I checked the odds coming here for the next manager. Yeah. And people with shorter odds than Inzaghi. Steven Gerrard, Frank Lampard,
Wow.
Fernando Torres.
I was going to say Torres, yeah.
Shorter odds than Inzaghi, the guy who just won Serie A by a mile.
Is that because he doesn't speak English?
Probably.
It has to be, doesn't
Probably.
it? It has to be, because there's no other reason.
Yeah, no. But I think Zidane doesn't speak English. He was shorter odds.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it just feels like mad disrespect for him, to be honest.
Well, I had the fight in my life last week on the Journo Insight show with Neil when we checked the odds together, and Abel Xavier was 40 to 1 with like Steven Gerrard and so. I mean, don't get me wrong, 40 to 1 is big. It was never likely to happen, but still. I love Abel Xavier. You know what I mean? But come on now, play the game.
No. But I do think, though, from a data perspective, if you're looking at the numbers specifically, I've been saying like you don't appoint a person, you appoint a playing style.
Yeah.
So if you're appointing a playing style, you want someone who's going to come in, grab all of Liverpool's boss players and coach them to play dominance, like dominating the game where the whole game's taking place here. You don't face any shots and you take about 20 down here, ideally, in an ideal world. So you want someone who's going to deliver that. And I looking at coaches who've done it, Flick is an example, Inzaghi, Gasperini, but he's getting on and he doesn't speak English. Xavi is doing it for Barcelona, but again, I don't think he speaks English. I don't know if he does.
I think it's okay. The Xavi one's an interesting one. We spoke about this briefly earlier on. It's like, he obviously said he was too tired to carry on with the Barcelona job, but that's just because it's the Barcelona job and the pressures that come with obviously Barcelona through and through. So he clearly feels a greater weight of responsibility to do a good job and to deliver, and it all got on top of him, it feels like. So there is a world whereby he could become a manager elsewhere and succeed potentially, but it doesn't feel like it's going to be Liverpool this summer. So
I also can't see it.
I can't even know.
About Xavi at Liverpool just doesn't feel like it.
Xavi on the other hand. To wrap up then, and I'm aware we've gone through a lot of stuff in this last half an hour, whatever it's been. To wrap up, listen, again, brass tacks here is, it looks likely that it's going to be Arne Slot. Is that fine? Is everything going to be fine?
Yeah. I mean, one of my takes in all of these shows has been, for the most part, you're as good as your players. So if Liverpool can retain a really good group, keep playing them, keep them fit, keep that success rate, that hit rate in the market with Hughes, and if Slot can kind of integrate them as at least nearly as well as Klopp has, we haven't had many failures at all, have we? Flops. That's the main thing, the players on the pitch. And if Slot, as I said, can just coach them in a way that is proactive and dominant for the most part, you're seeing most of the ball and most of the territory, most of the shot count, Liverpool will be fine. He doesn't have to be like this larger-than-life character who ends up on a flag on the cop or something like that. He just has to be in the mould of of a playing style where you can get behind it and you're the dominant side and stuff. So I think Liverpool will be fine in that sense. Yeah, I think you'd have to be appointing a Mourinho to get it wrong to that level, like where you start sitting 10 behind the ball like that, and
everything's undone, basically.
Yeah, but again, it'll be interesting when we get deeper into him, if he's the man.
Yeah, absolutely, and there's loads more to be discovered and unearthed. There's lots more conversations to have in and around it. That was the deep dive, a very ad hoc deep dive. There's been a lot going on today. We'll see you all soon. Take it easy.
Thank you so very, very much for checking out the video. If you enjoyed it, drop a like. The season is now well underway. If you need extra Redmen content, be it podcast, videos, documentaries, interviews, and general shows, fill your boots on redmenplus.com today.